Okay, thank you all for coming. I'll pass over the mic to Ivan. Thank you, Ivan.
Thank you. Yeah, I spent the next, I think it was like 5 or 6 years freelancing, something like that. I learned a lot in the process. I kind of got to grow with the industry, and I've gotten familiar with the techniques people use, and I've since worked on a lot of different projects in different fields, with the one field I worked in the most at the time being games. It's true that if you've got a solid grasp of the fundamentals, and if you're constantly uploading high quality work, that you're going to get noticed, and that's going to result in you getting work. You might get some job offers, or you might start seeing some commission requests come in, but that's a big if, and it's an even bigger question mark for how long it would take each person individually. Now, early on, after uploading for a while and having some success doing that, I wanted to try and find a more reliable way of getting jobs while I work on increasing my list of clients. I'll start by talking about one of the most important aspects, in my opinion, which is shapes. Whether I'm doing something stylized or not, I think a lot of it revolves around shapes. And when I'm painting them, I'm keeping in mind that for them to look pleasing, they need to not be overly complicated. I do this by simplifying the forms into mostly S-curves, C-curves, and straight lines. These are the shapes that are flashing for you on the sketch you see on screen now. This is something I learned years ago from a guy called Marco Bucci. It's not something you should take literally, though, but more as a general guide for simplification. I used to have trouble figuring out how to simplify more complex shapes before I started thinking about every shape as a combination of those 3 shapes. The second approach I use is the one I use when I'm working on like hard surface designs or like environment assets. And here I'm taking very basic shapes and I'm using 3D Code's cutting and slicing tools to draw out like the basic form I want to use. And then I'm using stencils to create the surface detail and modify the base sculpture. And once I have an asset that I can work with, I can make a copy and use 3D Code's various deformation tools to create additional assets and variations very quickly. Now that I've talked a little bit about my approach to painting and sculpting, I want to talk about one of the techniques I use to combine the two. Matching 3D elements to painting you're working on is fairly easy and straightforward. So I'll talk more about how I approach painting over like a 3D sketch or a complete scene that you're trying to overpaint. When you're doing this, the logic and method is the same as if you were